Hey everyone, welcome to Mind Over Modo. I'm Trevor Britton, and today we're going to look at how to customize an existing menu in Modo. So let's go ahead and get started. So I have one of the sample scenes that ships with Modo open here, and it has some animation on it. And I don't know if you're like me, but when I'm animating, I'll find myself working on a small range of frames and having to, drag the time bar to a certain place, and then either here or down here in the settings, and then hit preview to preview what that animation looks like so you can see the exact timing and make sure everything works. And then you'll work on another area, and then you'll want to look at the whole thing. And after a while, having to keep going from side to side or click down here from scrubbing up in the timeline would just get a little bit tedious. And I found myself wanting to be able to scrub here in the timeline and then just somehow set the endpoint to wherever my timeline was, scrub to another place, and set the out point to wherever the timeline was then. And so that was basically the inspiration for doing this. And I wanted to be able to right click and have those options available to me right here in this menu that already comes up in the timeline when you right click. So fortunately, Modo has a way that we can do this with the forms editor. And so we're going to look at how to script that first and how to edit this form to get those commands to show up in this menu. So to start out, I'm going to go over to the scripting tab here. And if you click on the interpreter tab, you're going to get the undo list. And I'm going to go ahead and just set the current time range like I normally would, and look in this undo list to see how Modo does it. So I can see at the bottom of the list that Modo uses this time range command. So I know that that's going to be the command I'm going to want to use in my script to try to do the same thing. So the next thing I'm going to do is click over here to the commands tab, and you can use the F button to search for commands by typing them in here. And I already have time typed in and pulled up, and time range is just a few entries down, and I have it expanded. So we can see that we have 3 arguments here: range, in, and out. Range, if we open that up, is where we select either the scene or the current range. We're going to want to use the current range, and then the next 2 arguments are the in and the out argument. If we look back here under the undo, we have current, and then we have 2 numbers, and those 2 numbers are the in and the out. You can also set those by typing in the word in colon and out colon. And sometimes that's helpful if you just need to call out one of these. For instance, if I just needed to change the out, but I didn't want to change the in, then to tell the script that I wanted the number I typed in to be the out time, I can put that out colon right there. And so if we just change that real quick, and then it sets to whatever 3 seconds is. So that's the command I'm going to use. I'm just going to go ahead and click on that again, copy it. I'm going to go over to my script editor, and I've already created a script, saved it in my scripts folder, typed in #Python, and I'm just going to paste that command here. Now I could create 2 commands, one to change the endpoint and another to change the out. But instead, I'm going to send an argument to this command, either the word in or out, and then based on that argument, I'll change either the in or out point, and that way I can keep it all under one command. So I actually realized I haven't typed in import LX yet. I need to do that. Then I'm going to go ahead and get the arguments by creating a variable, args equal lx.args. The next thing that I need to do is I need to get the time that the current time slider is at in the application. So how do we do that? If we go back over into Modo, let's drag this time slider around, and we can see the command that it uses is select.time. So So that's obviously a way to set the time, but how do I get the time? Well, it turns out that in Modo, you can also query commands. So if I go over here and delete the number that it was setting it to, and then just type in a question mark and hit return, if you look over here in the event log, we can see that it tells us the time in seconds that the time slider is currently at. So we can use that in our script to get the time. So actually, I'm just going to go back here, copy paste, just to be sure. I'm going to paste that in and delete that. Query. Now I'm going to make a variable called current time and set it equals to lx.eval. Put that in quotes. And now we should be getting the current time and assigning it to that variable. So I'm going to real quick just comment that command, and I'm going to say lx.out and say current time. Let's see if that's working. Go over here and going to say at set, or no, time to frame.py, hit return, and it looks like it's working. There's the time that it returned, so that's great. All right. Next, I need to go ahead and test for those arguments. So now we need to do an if then. So I'm going to say if args 0 equals in, then I'm going to do something here. Just put that there as a placeholder. So then I'm going to type in elif, and that will let me check and see if that argument was the word out. So same thing, except for the word out. Now we could just say else here and not elif, but by doing it this way, we can check specifically for in and out, and that way if another argument was passed, it won't try to do these commands. So that's the reason I'm doing it that way. Let's see, I'm just going to copy and paste this as another placeholder. Okay, so now we should have the basic structure of our script working. I'm just going to put in a test here real quick and say lx out and the word in. And then down here, I'm going to say lx out and the word out. And that way we can just test our logic and see if it's working correctly. So hit save. Okay, so I'm just going to go back over to Modo, type in time to frame.py, and then the argument is going to be in. So let's see if that works. Okay, and it sent the word in to the event log here. So that means it's working correctly because I typed the word in as the argument. Let's try it for out. Just click here and then type out. And it worked again. So that means our if-then statement is working correctly. And now all the basics of this script are in place. All I really need to do is add the actual command that will get this variable and set it in the application. So we're going to type in lx.eval, put this in quotes, and now we're going to use what we learned earlier. We can type in colon because we just want to set the in point here and then down here the out point. So now we type in %s outside the quotes, %, and the current time variable that we made up here. Now I want to do that same thing for this part of the if else, except I want to type in out. All right, so this should be working. Let's go ahead and test that back in Modo. All right, I'm gonna put the time slider at 47. I'm gonna type in, or actually I can click on it up here. And we have in as the argument. Let's return. Okay, that works. We're at 47. And now let's put the slider over here at, let's say 59. We'll click the one without and hit return on that. Okay, now it's at 59. So our script is working, that's great. And now we can move on and look at how we're going to add that command to the timeline form. So to work with forms in Modo, you're going to go up to System, then Form Editor, and you see you have all these folders that have all the different forms that are used in the Modo interface. So to find the one that we need to work on, Modo has a really great way to do this. You just click on Find Form, and then you can click in any form that is in the interface. So we're going to go down to the Time menu and right-click. And there we go. We can see that it went right down to the time menu, which wasn't too far away, but some of them are. So there's that menu. You can see the different commands. If we right click on it down here, add frame marker, time ranges. So what we want to do is we want to append this, but we want to do it in a way that's not destructive. In other words, I don't want to just brute force add some commands in here and permanently change the menu. I want to have a menu that I make that's separate from this, that Modo then adds to it at runtime. And the way that you can do this in Modo is if we click down that little plus sign that was there, we can see that each form has a head category and a tail category. What that means is that any forms that you put under here will either appear above the first item in the form, which is the head category, or after the last item in the form as it exists, which is the tail category. So we just need to start by creating a new form, and if we drop it in here, it'll appear at the top of the time menu. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go up here and hit create new form, and I'm just going to call it time range and hit OK. All right, it pops up down here. Now I need to drag it up to that slot that we saw, and I haven't found another way to do this except to just actually click and drag this all the way up there, which can be a little bit tedious, but it will eventually work. So let's just hold tight here. If anybody knows of a better way to do this, feel free to leave that in the comments for the video. Let's see, we're scrolling, and we're just looking for that time menu, and okay, there we go, time menu. So then I'm just going to drop this in the head category, and if we go down and click here now, nothing's happened. It still just starts with add frame marker, but we haven't added anything to our form. We just created it. So but we don't edit it here. I don't think we do anyway. Well, it looks like we might be able to. Okay, so yeah, when I click back onto it from there, it didn't come up on this side, so I don't think we can edit it here. We have to go back down where it dropped it. Let's find it again. Oops. This asterisk means that it has not been saved. And so there it is, time range. Now we can edit it, and we can start adding commands. So that's what we want to do. We want to add the command, and it's at time to frame, .py, and then we want to put in as the first command. Okay, and then we have to give it a name. I'm going to say set current in to time. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm not sure. That may not be the best label, but we'll just go with it for now. Okay, then we're going to duplicate that command. I'm going to say set current out to time. And down here, under the command, we're going to type in out as the variable. So we have this form, and we have two commands in that form. Now if we go down here to the time range and right click, we can see that that time range form has been put above everything else, and the two commands are right there in the menu. Now the next thing that I'm going to do, I don't want to have to go to this sort of sub menu and drill down to these. I want them to be right here. And the way we do that is we change the style of this form right here under style. And if I remember right, I think it is inline subcontrols. Let's try that. Now let's right click. Okay, and there we go. Right there they appear, and we don't have to worry about going through another sub menu. Another thing that we can do that's kind of nice, just visually, is we can add a divider right there. And now when we right click, we'll see those two, and then this picks up where the regular menu did. So now we're getting to the point of using the head and the tail parts, because I could have just gone in and added these commands down here, and then if I quit Modo, what happens is Modo embeds the changed time menu into the master config file that drives the whole application. But I like to keep things cleaner than that. I want to have the Modo config file unchanged, and then I want to be able to have my menu as a separate config file, so that if I want to, I can get things back to the default state, the default Modo state. That's just me. I'm kind of OCD, I guess. But one of the benefits of that is if you save this as a separate config file, then you can put it on other computers and carry that menu with you in a real easy way. So how do we do that? This is not one of the most intuitive parts of Modo, but what you want to do is you want to go here to File. You want to go to Config Export. Okay, this takes us to the configs folder, our user configs folder, and then I'm just going to type time range. I'm going to hit save. And then what I want to do is I don't want to import. I want to select under fragment. I want to select forms, because that's what we've changed. And if we had changed something else in the interface and had all selected, it would put all of those changes into this config. We've only changed the form, so we're probably okay. But just to be sure, and to show you that, we're going to hit Forms, select that, and hit OK. Okay, now if you look here, I think our menu that we created was right in here somewhere, and it's gone. So that could seem a little bit strange, but let's go back up here to the top too and see how the other one's doing. Okay, looks like that got collapsed. I'm going to do Find Form, right click. So there's our time menu again, but you notice now that our new menu has not been attached to it. So what has happened? Well, um, Modo has exported it to a separate config file, and the only way that Modo reads those config files is at startup. So this is actually kind of a good thing because this sort of shows us that we're back to Modo's default state. There's no asterisks by any of that. Um, and our new config is completely separated. So not only are any changes to this time menu not going to be baked in, but our new menu itself that we created down here, it's not there anymore, that's not going to be baked into the master config. It's going to be its own separate config. And we'll look at what that means in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and quit Modo. Okay, I've restarted Modo, and here's our time menu. And if we twirl that down, we can see we've got that time range in there now. And if we right click, there's our menus commands that we set up before. So like I said before, that lets us keep this form separate from the Modo config. So right now we're seeing those commands. If I go to the configs folder, and I'm just going to take, you can see the config we created, and I'm just going to take it and move it out to the desktop. I'm going to go back to Modo, which by the way, you can get to that configs folder under the system, open user configs. I'm going to go back to Modo, I'm going to quit and restart. Okay, I'm back in Modo and it's open. Let's see here. Okay, so now the menu doesn't show anything. And if we right click, those commands are gone. So you can see how that's separated and portable. I can move that config around, and as long as I put it in the Modo configs folder on some machine, it should pick it up and actually put it in the time menu. So that's kind of a nice thing. All right, I've put the config file back in the Modo configs folder and opened our file back up here. So we're in the animate tab, and if we scrub around here in the timeline, we right click, we see our commands from that form. So I'm going to say set current in time into time. And that works just like I wanted to. And now if we scrub over here, we can do it for out, and it works just like a charm. You can hit preview GL and see that time range really quickly. So looks like we got done what we set out to do. Thanks for watching, and leave any questions or comments below the video. I'm also starting a Facebook group as an experiment to just see if that's a good way to interact with everyone who likes to watch these videos. So I'll put a link in the description of this video, and it's also going to be at the top of the channel as well. So if that's a way that you'd like to interact, I'm thinking about putting up some polls and different things like that. If you want to do that, just head over to that Facebook page and like it, subscribe to it, just however all that works. Put up a post on the wall, and that way I'll know that people want to use it. If you don't, that's fine. It's just an experiment. I kind of want to see if people who like watching these would also like to interact on a Facebook group page. So anyway, that's there if you want to use it. Thanks again for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial.